You've got it on the Linda Steele Show on News Talk 980 CKNW.
Well, good afternoon and thanks for joining me. So the Trudeau government has been sworn in. We all know that. Now, though, it's time for them to get to work, and they have a lot of work to do. One of the big promises made on the campaign trail was to immediately launch an inquiry into missing and murdered Aboriginal women in Canada. This is what Prime Minister Trudeau said.
I believe that there is a need for a national public inquiry to bring justice for the victims, healing for the families, and to put an end to this tragedy. That's what we will do, and we will work with communities and with engaged stakeholders to ensure that we get moving on this quickly.
All right, no small task. Just ask my next guest. Wally Opal is senior counsel with Boughton Law. He is the former BC Attorney General. And Wally, you led a provincial investigation, a lot of people know, into missing and murdered Aboriginal women. How challenging was that?
Well, it was probably the most difficult thing that I had done, Linda, because we were investigating the police investigations into the largest serial killer in Canadian history. Mm-hmm. And our task was to find out why it took the police so long to catch Picton, who was murdering women throughout the 1990s. And so if we're going to have an inquiry, and an inquiry really, Linda, is an investigation. And it's an investigation into very difficult questions. And our inquiry was called at the heels of the Picton investigation and trial. So we held 93 days of public hearings. We traveled the north. We went into the Aboriginal villages. We heard from 85 to 90 witnesses. We went through probably 50,000 pages of police documents, and we published a 1,400-page report with 65 recommendations.
Well, then my question, Wally, is do we actually need another inquiry?
Well, I think that inquiries can serve a useful purpose in that we get to listen to victims and families and the people who are really suffered the tragedies. And our inquiry did a good job when it came to that, because we went into the communities along Highway 16 and even here, the women who came to testify. But there are no real mysteries as to what causes all of this. It's poverty, it's drug addiction, it's alcoholism, violence against women, and the lack of education, the lack of employment opportunities. So those are the things that really need to be addressed. And so if we're going to have an inquiry, I don't think we should be going over the same grounds that our inquiry went into, or the RCMP have conducted two comprehensive ones, and then Judge Murray Sinclair delivered the report of the Truth and Reconciliation report. So,
right.
So, you know, the Aboriginal people have been studied to death in Canada.
That's my question, though, then, is if we know what the problems are, and we have heard from from a lot of Aboriginal people, is this more a sense of giving people an opportunity to tell stories, or is it about approaching this in a completely different way, saying we know what the problems are, let's just sort of implement solutions now?
Well, we need solutions. There's no question about that. And the concern that I have about calling an inquiry is that I hope it doesn't put off the solutions aspect of it for another 3 or 4 years, because there's work that needs to be done now. And all you have to do is go to some of the Aboriginal communities, and you talk about the mistreatment, the historical mistreatment of Aboriginal people in Canada is something that's well documented. So we need to get into some of the root causes of the poverty, the lack of educational opportunities, and all of those things that really are at the root causes of the disparity that exists between Aboriginal people and the rest of Canada. So I think it can serve a very useful purpose if we go and listen to the real victims and hear their stories. But on the other hand, I wouldn't want to see a postponing of the real solutions or the real policies that need to be addressed.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so what advice would Wally Opal give the Trudeau government and has given him? We're going to talk about that next.
This is News Talk 980 CKNW. Vancouver's News, Vancouver's Talk. The Linda Steele Show on News Talk 980 CKNW.
You know, one of the many promises that the new Trudeau government has made would be to launch fairly quickly an inquiry into the missing and murdered Aboriginal women in Canada. And I am talking this afternoon to Wally Opal, who is now senior counsel with Boughton Law, but was the former BC Attorney General who led a provincial investigation here into missing and murdered Aboriginal women. So, Wally, as Ottawa embarks on a national inquiry, you say it's critical that they have to set the right tone right off the bat.
Well, I think the first thing they should do is have some tight terms of reference. In other words, what questions do you want answered? And then they have to set a time limit. Otherwise, inquiries can go on forever and ever. And what we need here are some solutions, and to find out how can we improve the lot of the Aboriginal communities. So we need to get into that, and we need to look at some of the previous findings that have been made by other inquiries and commissions to make sure that we don't go over the same ground over and over again. So those are some of the things that we need to do. The other thing they need to do is, I don't think you need to have the same type of inquiry that we held, because ours was, you bring the police into the room, ask them why they didn't catch Picton earlier, why the investigations failed. So we got some answers, and we were critical of the police investigations. We were also critical of the public for being indifferent to the plight of the poor women on the downtown east side. So those are some of the things that you have to keep in mind. I think in any inquiry, the commissioners should go into the villages, into the cities, and talk to people to ask them their views as to how we can prevent future tragedies from taking place. Those are some of the things that they need to do.
And the big concern, too, as with all inquiries, is they take a long time. There's an enormous amount of resources. They cost a lot of money. You get a bunch of recommendations, and then it goes on a shelf somehow and starts collecting dust.
Yeah, that's true. But, in fairness to the governments and to the police, both the VPD and the RCMP have really embraced the recommendations that we made. The province changed the laws when it comes to missing persons. Who is a missing person? When should the police get involved? The sharing of information. The RCMP have gone into a real-time intelligence center where they share information. Those are some of the mistakes that were made at the time of the Picton years. So I have to commend the police and governments for what they have done with our recommendations. And I would just ask that if we're going to have this inquiry, let's make sure that we pay attention to what the commissioners say, and let's pay attention and implement their recommendations and show some respect to the Aboriginal communities who have suffered so much over the years.
So how quickly would you like to see this get underway, and when can we as Canadians reasonably expect to see some recommendations? Well,
I would think that under the direction of the Attorney General that they could start drafting the terms of reference almost immediately, and it can be ratified as early as the first cabinet meeting that the Prime Minister calls. So it shouldn't take that long. But they're new and they're getting their feet wet, so a lot of things can take place. But I think that's what they need to do.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me.
Always good to be with you, Linda.
All right, that's Wally Opal, former BC Attorney General. Just interesting, today someone forwarded me a report from West Coast LEAF. This is the West Coast Women's Legal Education and Action Fund. And when it is asking, how is BC measuring up in women's rights when it comes to missing and murdered Indigenous women, it is giving BC an F, saying despite ongoing international criticism, BC has made little progress to end violence against Indigenous women and has indicated that it does not intend to report publicly on future progress. So someone at least thinks we haven't moved very far forward on this front. Stay tuned. All the day's top stories are coming up next on News Talk 980 CKNW.